Strange magic. What's up, people? Heading over. Gotta pick up Johnny Shane. And then we're gonna go to Bobby's. Play some casino or dominoes or something. Sarah got a hold of me yesterday. Patricia died. I did a video about her not too long ago. She took herself off of kidney dialysis. She was Nate and Bobby are my two oldest and best homies, and she's Bobby's aunt, but he didn't really know her well. She was his dad's sister, and his dad died when he was like 4 years old. His dad got in a motorcycle wreck and died. But I knew her better than Bobby. I kept telling him, you know, she's always asking about you, talking about you. And I always told her, I said, well, you can be proud of Bobby because that brother, he's true blue. He might not always done the right things in life, but the game he played it the way it was supposed to be played. He ain't no snitch. He's loyal. And when he fucks up, he carries his own weight. He don't take people down with him or snitch on people and shit. Ain't no back down in the brother. I told her about some of the fights me and Bobby's been in together. She's the one that told me that the Wind Tramps used to call me the boy that wouldn't stay down, because she dated an officer in a motorcycle club when she was younger. But she had lost a leg about 10 years ago, and then her kidneys were failing. She was on dialysis and she took herself off. And Sarah's still having a hard time understanding why she would do that, because she was such a fighter. And I told her, I said, you get to a certain point in life when your health starts failing and you've been fighting so long that you just get tired and it's time to go. But she's definitely gonna be missed. I'm gonna miss laughing with her, and she was a wild one, but she had a heart of gold, and I loved her dearly. She was a very special lady. Really gonna miss Patricia. This fucking stupid thing. At least I ain't gotta do hands-on. Oh, fuck. But yeah. Oh, and I left out some things doing that last video on my life story. One of the things I left out is the time that it's actually when I was saved. Yeah, I backslid after that, but I don't know if you can see that right there on my wrist, but my stepdad, he was an Eagle Scout, and he's the one, everything I know about hunting, fishing, camping, I learned all that from my stepdad. But what he was notorious for is his knives, his kitchen knives, butcher knives, they were razor sharp. If you were doing dishes, you know, back before we had dishwashers and everything, you did not put his knives down in the water until you were going to wash them, because you would get cut bad if you reached in and grabbed one of them. And I ended up cutting my wrist one night, and it was so bad they were saying my hand was going to be like this for the rest of my life. It's still, I can't feel most of my fingers. I can't feel them. And I cut deep enough that every time my heart beat, blood would squirt out. It felt like an electrical shock is what it felt like. I just pushed down as hard as I could and went across, and it laid it deep. I went upstairs. I figured I'd just go in and bleed out, and my stepsister come out of the bedroom, started screaming. They called the ambulance. The ambulance guys and the police had to restrain me to get me on the gurney. They got me to the hospital, and the doctor was trying to see what kind of damage I had done up in there. And when he went to grab a hold of the skin with a pair of hemos, I jammed them hemos up in my wrist. And he started cussing. He threw the hemos, walked out of the room. And I thought, all right, cool, I can die now. And he came back in the room, and he they gave me something so I would go to sleep. Whenever I woke up, they were putting the cast on. And he said, make sure you put this on tight. I do not want that crazy son of a bitch getting something up in here and tearing these stitches out. But since I had tried to kill myself, they sent me to St. Elizabeth's Hospital's mental unit. And I swear, this is a true story. Nobody's gonna believe me, but it's true. Every fucking day, this black woman named Mary would come in my room, and she would say, Mark, Jesus sent me to talk to you. He loves you. If you would just profess your sins and repent and accept him into your heart, you'll be saved. And I'm telling you, I would cuss this woman. There were days I threw my breakfast tray at her. And this went on every fucking day for about a month and a half. She'd come in that room every fucking day and say the same thing to me. And I would cuss her and drive her out of the room. Well, the doctor had put me on lithium for my bipolar. And my mom was really hopeful that this lithium would straighten her son out and help. We got a weekend pass, and I went out and I took a couple hits of LSD, and I come back frying my brains out. And it didn't take long for the nurses to realize with my dilated pupils that I was tripping balls real bad. And the doctor called a couple days after that, called me and down to the office, and I went down there, that psychiatrist, and my mom was in the room. And he proceeded to explain that he's told my mom he can't be mixing street drugs with this lithium. It's dangerous. Unless he goes to rehab to get some help for drug and alcohol abuse, I'm not going to be able to keep him on this lithium. And my mom broke down crying, and I was like, ain't no fucking way, fuck you. I went down the hall, told the nurses at the nurses station on the way down the hall, fuck you and fuck you. I was fuck you to everybody, man. And my mom, she was just heartbroken. And that night I was laying there and I was thinking about what Mary said. So I said, okay. And I said that prayer she said to say, but nothing happened. The next night, I said the same prayer. This time, something happened. And it was extremely powerful. It was so powerful, I cried. I mean, sobbed, just sobbed. It's probably the hardest I ever cried in my life. From like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night till like 5 o'clock the next morning. But it wasn't a sad crying. It was like a relief. Like the world had been lifted off my shoulders, and the peace that I felt that night. I've never in my life felt that much peace. Not before, not since. It was incredible. And it was very fucking powerful. And for 8 months, I was on fire. I mean, I was on fire for 8 months. But when the sun came up that next morning, I couldn't wait for Mary to come in the room because I had to tell Mary what had happened. I mean, it was incredible. And Mary never came in the room. So the next thing I did is I went down to the doctor's office. I knocked on the door. I told him to call my mom and tell her that I'll go to drug rehab. And then I proceeded to go up to the nurse's station and ask them where Mary was. They said, who? I said, Mary. They said, who are you talking about? I said, the black woman that comes in my room every fucking day telling me she's there to talk to me about Jesus. Jesus wanted to tell me that he loved me. I need to talk to Mary. They had no fucking clue who I was talking about. And what really makes that strange, I don't know if it's still the same way, but back then, a juvenile unit, the privacy factor on those juvenile units was huge. You do not just walk up on a juvenile unit for drug rehab or psychiatric, anything like that. And I never seen Mary after that. And it's weird to me. I'm not saying it was the Virgin Mary. I'm not saying. All I'm saying is it's weird that this woman keeps coming back every fucking day, and I'm cussing her, throwing shit at her. I mean, and then the night that I accept Christ, she don't show up the next day. To me, it's strange. Very strange. It's also very strange for a woman that the nurses don't know who the fuck it is every day to get on that unit. I mean, it was a lockdown unit. And like I said, the juvenile units were very private. But yeah, I left that story out. Now, for 8 months, I was on fire. I mean, I was walking with God. I was reading my Bible. I was on fire. That's how I know a God's real, because I felt it. I mean, I was on fire. And after about 8 months, I started hanging around with the old crew, and I backslid big time. And it got real bad. I got worse than before, as you'll see in the story. But God came back. I asked him to come back to me whenever I was in prison, and he did. And ever since, I've been doing my best to stay walking with God. But very powerful experience. And whenever I was a little boy, you ain't gonna believe this neither, but it's the truth. I don't really care what anybody says. When I was a little boy, my dad and mom got in a particularly bad argument, and I got scared. So I decided I was going to go out into the woods. And I was little, 5 maybe. And I went out in the woods, and I came into this clearing, just a little small clearing, and it was full of sunflower seeds, or sunflowers, not seeds. But to me, these sunflowers were huge. Now, to a young kid like that, sunflowers would seem really big. But I'm telling you, these were like larger than life. And me and Amy, when we first got together, I was telling her about that day with the sunflowers. And I told her, somebody asked me to do something. And they said it was going to be very hard and I was going to go through a lot of pain. And I said I would do it. The problem was I couldn't remember for the life of me what I said I was going to do. And it always bothered me. Then when I got sick and I sat back and I looked at all the just craziness that I have been through in my life. And I can't talk about all of it. Because for me to tell my dirt, that's one thing. But I can't be talking about shit that can get other people in trouble, and I can't do that. But looking back on my life, that's what made me think maybe God wanted me to tell my story. Because looking back on it, it was hard, and I hurt a lot. And I thought a way I could turn that into something good for God was to tell my story and give God the glory in it and let people know that I'm only here by His good graces. And so that's why I did my first channel. But then I got to talking about the politics, and it didn't go too good for old Mark, because we are free to talk about whatever we want as long as it's what they want us to talk about. So like I said, this time I'm going to keep it just about what God did for me, and I'm going to keep it just my story and leave the politics out of it. I could do another channel on another platform for that if I want, but right now it's more important I get my story out, it doesn't get taken down, and now whenever I close my eyes, there'll be some answers for some people. But when God speaks to your heart, you know it's God. And I've always felt like I was supposed to. I mean, I can remember where I was in places, getting locked up in places. I'd always be like, have you ever been in the situation I'm in? Have you ever been through what I'm going through? And every time a psychiatrist or a psychologist would say, no, I haven't. And I'd be like, well, then how the fuck do you know what I'm going through? That's like whenever I was in prison. There's this small town by Vienna, Illinois, Shawnee Correctional Center, this small town. And each inmate would get a card every year with somebody would write a little letter in it. And you would get a bag, a little brown paper bag. You might get some deodorant and some Zuzus and Wham Whams, or some candy and toothbrush, toothpaste. You know, it wasn't much, but it was kind of the people to think of us like that and send a little care package in at Christmas. But I got mine, and this woman had wrote a letter in there. And this is how I felt when I was a kid, too. You know, she said, you know, I know what you're going through is really hard in there. I know exactly what you're going through because before they opened the prison, all the people in the town got to spend the night there. So I know what you're going through. And I thought, lady, you're very kind to take the time to write that note, but you ain't got a fucking clue. When you were here with your friends from town and the guards, you knew you were going home in the morning. You weren't locked up with a bunch of murderers and rapists and violent people, you know? You don't know what it's like to have your children come up for a visit and watch bars slam as they're walking away and you can't go with them. You have no idea what I'm going through. You don't know what it's like to see a man stab another man up and kill him. You don't know what it's like to see two men stab each other up over a state t-shirt. A t-shirt. And people say, well, over a t-shirt? Well, yeah, over a t-shirt. Because in prison, everybody's watching all the time. And if you let somebody take a t-shirt from you, next thing you know, you'll be on a liquid diet. And then the next thing you know, you might be somebody's woman. You can't let nobody take nothing from you. You have to fight. You have to defend yourself. Or it's just going to get worse. Yeah. Seen two guys stab each other up over a t-shirt. And I mean, they were both a mess. I know the one probably didn't make it because when you see blood bubbling up out of a dude's chest, he either got hit in the heart or the lung, and it's probably not going to be good for him. And then the other dude was stabbed up bad too. They went at it real hard. And it was over a regular white t-shirt, and it had one of their numbers on it, because they'd always take a little stencil and spray your number on all your prison clothes, prison blues, your t-shirt, underwear, everything. But yeah, I mean, that's how, you know, so yeah, it was kind for her to send that in, but I thought, lady, don't sit there and tell me you know what I'm going through. You haven't got a clue. Since I was 15 and a half years old, I was either on the streets or I was locked up somewhere until, we're talking from about 1984 to 1994 or 95. It's a lot of years. A lot of wasted years. But I had left that out. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, to tell you everything that was going on, there's no way I could do it. There's too much. A lot of my story I can't tell because it could get other people in a lot of trouble. And a lot of my story I don't tell because the last thing I want is to glamorize the violence of it all and act like it's cool, because it wasn't. And also because if I told you honestly the things I have done in my life, if I heard somebody else honestly saying the things that I had done, I'd be like, you lying motherfucker. I wouldn't believe it. Because some of the shit's out there so crazy that most people wouldn't believe me. And this ain't about telling war stories, and it's about telling the story enough that people can get the idea of how far gone I was. and how God pulled me back from the edge. And it's also a story so some young kids will understand. I didn't think that when I was acting crazy and not listening and not following the rules, and I never thought my life would end up like this. I thought that kind of stuff happened to other guys, you know. If I could get just one person. I've helped a few people I know for a fact because they've told me. I haven't helped the targeted group I'm wanting to help, but it's not up to me who gets helped. What matters to me is that I do what I feel God wanted me to do. But if I could help one person, you know, if you go to schools and you try to talk, you can't talk about God, and you can't talk like I normally talk. And I'm not so old that I don't remember what it's like to be a kid in high school. And somebody comes in talking like a teacher, I'm going to drown them out real quick, and I ain't even going to be listening. Now somebody comes in and they say, hey, my name's Mark Volkerding. I've come here today to tell you guys my story. And if you don't want to listen, I don't really give two fucks. I'm here for that one person. If I can get just one of you to actually open your ears and maybe change the course of your life that you're on, man, it would make me feel like my life was worth something good. I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through the shit that I've gone through and feel the hurt that I have felt. I always was comfortable with anger because I grew up in anger. Anger was around me from a very young age. And whenever I would get hurt, I would convert that hurt into anger. Isn't that what anger is? I mean, when do we get angry? We get angry when we feel physical or emotional pain. Like I said, you wake up in the middle of the night, you stub your toes, you want to put your fist through the wall. You get angry, it hurts. Somebody says something to you, and a lot of people like acting like they don't care what nobody says. Even I do that. But I think what every human being wants at the end of the day, whether they want to admit it or not, is to be loved and accepted. We are very social beings, us humans. And when somebody says something real hateful and hurtful to us, especially if it's in front of other people, it can be embarrassing and it can hurt like hell. Words can hurt worse than punches sometimes. But, you know, when we get hurt, what happens? We get angry. I know me, my first reaction when somebody says something that hurts me is to strike back, you know, and hurt them back. I get angry. I always feel anger first. And I think the reason for that is because I'm more comfortable with anger. Nobody likes feeling hurt. I would just convert all that pain I felt inside into doing drugs and just raging against the world. And whenever I say raging, I mean my anger, my temper was so bad. I've had a lot of people describe it as demonic. I would just flip out. And I'm not proud of that. I'll tell you something else about anger. Anger will eat you up just like a cancer. Just like a cancer, it will eat you alive. I've been angry my whole life. And whenever I found out my health was real bad, I really looked at my life and I thought about what matters to me most with the time I got left. All I want is to finish telling my story, and I want to die at peace. I don't want to die angry. Right now, the only peace I'm not going to have is leaving my wife and the fact that me and my father haven't talked in 4 years. I have forgiven so many times, and it just starts right back up again. Since I haven't been talking to my dad, I'm actually learning to love myself a little bit. You know, when you're constantly degrading your child and telling your child what a screw up he is and how useless he is, your child's not gonna stop loving you. Your child's gonna stop loving himself. My friend Audrey, when I first started doing my first channel, she sent me a message asking if I had Messenger. And I thought, well, it might be somebody that needs somebody to talk to, so I said, yeah, and I gave her my Messenger. Whole time I'm telling my wife what's going on. And I told Nate, she sent me a picture of herself, and she's beautiful. She could be a model. Very beautiful woman. And I said, look at this, Nate. This is somebody that don't know me. This is some hairy-legged dude over in India trying to catfish me. Nate looked at her picture. He says, she's too beautiful to even be human. Well, turns out she's real. But she said to me, she said, I'm a fan. Before we did a video and talked to each other, I said, well, you need to find somebody else to be a fan of. I ain't nobody to be a fan of. And I couldn't figure out why this beautiful woman was watching my videos. And she told me, she said, you're awesome and amazing. She could have called me an asshole, a dickhead, a fucker. I would have been able to deal with that. But I didn't know how to deal with being told I was awesome and amazing. It was the compliments I had a hard time with, not the cut downs. I was used to the cut downs. I told her, I said, I've been called a lot of things. I ain't never been called awesome and amazing. But before we did our video chat, I said, look, I'm very married. And she said, I'm very married too. And we met. She's real. I pray for her. I pray for her husband. He's a wonderful guy. I pray for her children. I love her like a little sister. And I asked her husband one time, me and him were talking, he said, the reason she watched my videos is because she was a new Christian and she was having problems with her faith. And he said something I said in one of my videos helped her. She said, if God can help him and love him, he can help me and love me. And not that long ago, she had a group of women, a prayer group going, and she's not the targeted group I was looking to help. But can you think of a more beautiful way to help a human being than with their faith? Because you're helping them with their immortal soul, something that's forever, not just of this world. Well, most of Johnny's. But yeah, I forgot about that. I'm trying to get the main points that up to, through high school before I move on. Because after high school, whenever I got out of that, whenever I was a ward of the state and I got out of Chaddock, that's when all hell really broke loose. I mean, all the nut wards and the crazy shit I was doing, that ain't nothing. That ain't nothing. It gets a lot worse and a lot more crazy, but I'm gonna hop off here. Like I said, all my brothers are camera shy. There's a couple of them know about my videos. There's a couple of my uncles know about my videos. But most of my brothers, they don't like cameras, man. Not at all. I don't really like them neither. But we shall continue this story later. I'm gonna enjoy a day with these four crazy motherfuckers, man. I've been truly blessed with the friends in my life. They're all true blue loyal, 100% solid, and I love each and every one of them very much. That cracks me up. Johnny's, this duplex he lives in, on the one side the sign says welcome. Over on Johnny's side it says go away, go on, get. That fucking cracks me up. But I'll talk to you guys later. Yeah, look, welcome and then go away, get. Go on, get. Love and respect, everybody.